Welcome back, everyone. Ready for another deep dive?
Always.
This time, we're taking a look at Herman Melville.
The man behind Moby-Dick.
Exactly. We've got a bunch of sources to help us out.
Yeah.
There's a biography from biography.com.
Oh, and a Wikipedia entry, of course.
Right. And to get a little deeper, we've got some excerpts from the website, The Life and Works of Herman Melville.
And to round things out, a page from the Berkshire Historical Society website.
So we're going beyond just Moby-Dick.
We really want to uncover who the real Herman Melville was.
Yeah, not just the literary icon, but the guy who lived and breathed and, wrote this incredible book. What do you say we jump right in?
Let's do it.
Okay, so first things first, Melville's life, it wasn't all smooth sailing.
Not at all. He had a pretty tough start, actually.
He was born in 1819 in New York City.
Third of 8 children. Can you imagine?
Wow, a big family in the city.
Must have been quite a household. And, both of his grandfathers were big figures in the American Revolution.
Oh, yeah.
Yep.
That kind of legacy, adventure, patriotism must have been a lot for young Herman to carry.
Definitely a lot to live up to. But then tragedy struck when he was just 12.
His father died, and the family faced financial ruin.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so at 14, Melville was working as a bank clerk just to help support his family.
So young. Talk about responsibility.
It's no wonder he longed for something more, some kind of escape.
He tried to get a job as a surveyor for the Erie Canal.
But that didn't work out.
So, like a lot of young men back then, he turned to the sea.
Looking for opportunity.
And adventure, I'm sure.
It was a decision that would change his life forever.
Yeah, I mean, that's where the Moby-Dick connection starts, right?
Absolutely.
His first voyage, though, was in 1839 on a merchant ship.
Called the St. Lawrence. It sailed to Liverpool.
Okay, so not quite the South Seas yet.
Okay.
But then, in 1841, he set sail on a whaling ship.
The Acushnet. And this is where things get really interesting.
Tell me more.
Well, Melville actually deserted the ship in the Marquesas Islands,
Yeah, and he ended up living among indigenous people there.
who, if I remember correctly, had a reputation for cannibalism.
That's right. You can only imagine the stories he must have gathered from that experience.
It's like something straight out of one of his books.
Exactly. Think Typee. His first novel definitely echoes of his time in the Marquesas.
So he escapes the islands, but his adventures don't stop there
He gets caught up in a mutiny.
and ends up in jail.
Yeah. Then there's some beachcombing in Tahiti.
And finally, after 3 years, he returns home.
What a journey. Talk about a crash course in life outside of conventional society.
Absolutely. And all of this before he even wrote Moby-Dick.
Right. Those early experiences, the isolation, the facing of death, the exposure to different cultures, it all fed into the depth and complexity of his later work.
So he comes back home and starts channeling those experiences into his writing.
His first 2 books, Typee and Omu, were both based on his South Seas adventures.
And they were huge successes.
Instant bestsellers. He became a literary celebrity almost overnight.
Wow, what a story. I mean, from bank clerk to celebrated author in just a few years.
That's pretty incredible.
And then in 1847, he marries Elizabeth Shaw. They start a family.
He's trying to provide for a family while pursuing his writing ambitions.
Sounds familiar. But as we all know, Melville's masterpiece, Moby-Dick.
Didn't quite have the same reception as his first 2 books.
Yeah, that's a whole other chapter of the story.
And a fascinating one at that. Moby-Dick. Yeah, it wasn't exactly a hit when it came out.
Quite the opposite, actually.
He published in 1851, and it was a total flop.
A flop.
Critics hated it. Sales were terrible. You pour your heart and soul into a book, and
And it just falls flat.
it's tough. I mean, it reminds us even the greats face setbacks, right?
Yeah, it makes you wonder what those critics would say now.
Now that it's considered one of the great American novels.
Right. And it wasn't a one-time thing for Melville either.
Nope. His books after Moby-Dick, like Pierre, they didn't do well either.
So his career took a downturn.
Pretty much. His finances suffered, and he ended up taking a job as a customs inspector in New York City.
From celebrated author to...
To a government job trying to make ends meet.
Wow, what a change. But, thinking about Moby-Dick, it wasn't all just from his imagination.
Oh, definitely not.
It was connected to his own experiences whaling and a true story that really affected him.
You're talking about the whale ship Essex.
Yeah, the one that sank in 1820.
After a sperm whale attack,
Brutal.
the crew went through hell, starvation, dehydration, even cannibalism.
Oh my gosh, that's horrifying.
It really shows the dark side of whaling back then.
Not just adventure, but...
A fight for survival against nature and the limits of human endurance.
Melville read about the Essex while he was at sea, right?
He did, and it clearly stayed with him.
It must have been chilling reading that, knowing he was out there on the ocean too.
I bet. It definitely added a layer of real-life terror to his understanding of whaling.
And you see echoes of the Essex in Moby-Dick, right?
Definitely. Ahab's obsession with the white whale, that thirst for revenge, it reflects the trauma of the Essex survivors.
Melville took this real-life tragedy and turned it into art.
Exploring themes of obsession, revenge, the struggle against nature.
Themes that still resonate with us today.
Absolutely. It's incredible how a story rooted in real events can explore such universal ideas.
And it's not just the Essex that shaped Moby-Dick.
Right. You see Melville's own struggles with faith, his fascination with different cultures, his own experiences with loss and hardship, all woven into the novel.
He poured his whole life into it.
Yeah, against this epic backdrop of a whaling voyage.
And yet, it was rejected during his lifetime.
It's a reminder that success doesn't always come right away.
That sometimes a work of art needs time to find its audience.
Melville kept writing after Moby-Dick, though.
He did.
Mostly poetry, though.
Oh, interesting. Were they well received?
Not really. They were largely ignored during his lifetime.
Like what kind of poetry?
He wrote battle pieces about the Civil War and Clairol, a long philosophical poem about faith and doubt.
Huh. A long poem going unnoticed, especially after his novels.
Yeah, it's strange, right? Maybe his style fell out of favor, or maybe he was just ahead of his time.
I guess literary tastes change.
They do. It happens all the time. Even the most talented writers can fall out of favor.
Melville died in 1891. Pretty much unknown.
A stark contrast to his early fame, but his story doesn't end there.
It's kind of like a comeback story waiting to happen, right?
Yeah, almost like a literary plot twist forgotten in his time.
But then rediscovered.
It really shows how success can be so fleeting.
And how true recognition sometimes comes way later.
Like Van Gogh, right? Struggled to sell paintings while alive.
And now his works are worth a fortune.
Exactly. Makes you think about how we measure success in art.
Yeah, is it about money or fame, or is it about the work itself?
How it speaks to people across generations.
Melville never gave up creating, though, even when it seemed like the world had moved on.
That's inspiring. That commitment to his craft, even without recognition.
It's like he knew he had something to say.
And that's what matters. It's a message for all of us, really. Even when things get tough, even when people don't get it, keep creating.
Keep pushing those boundaries.
Tell those stories that matter to you.
Because you never know, you might leave a legacy that lasts for centuries.
That's exactly what happened with Melville.
So he did get his comeback.
Oh yeah, in the early 20th century, he was rediscovered.
And Moby-Dick?
Went from being a confusing mess to a masterpiece.
Talk about a turnaround. Sometimes genius just needs a little time.
Makes you think about what success really means, right? Melville had early fame, then faded into obscurity.
But in the end,
His passion, his willingness to explore the big questions of life and death.
that's what resonated.
That's what made him immortal, even if it was after he was gone.
So knowing all this about Melville now, his struggles, his adventures,
Does it change how you see Moby-Dick?
definitely adds a whole new level. You can practically feel his life in the book.
It makes you want to read it again, right? With a fresh perspective.
To see those connections between the man and the myth.
Because Moby-Dick isn't just about a whale.
It's about Melville himself,
Wrestling with the mysteries of existence.
showing us that art can outlive us all.
Powerful stuff.
There you have it. Herman Melville, adventurer, storyteller. A soul touched by the deep.
We've gone from the man to the myth and back again.
And hopefully this deep dive has given you a new appreciation for Moby-Dick.
As more than just a classic, but a reflection of the man himself.
A reminder that even a forgotten genius can leave a lasting mark.
Thanks for joining us.
And until next time, keep exploring, keep asking questions, keep diving deep,